So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sabitha Pillai-Friedman. She's a psychotherapist and ASEC certified sex therapist and an approved supervisor. She works with individuals and couples in her private practice at Rittenhouse Relationship and Sexual Health in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She has over 25 years of experience in providing individual, couple, and sex therapy. Dr. Pillai-Friedman frequently speaks to healthcare professionals, cancer survivors, and patients about cancer and sexuality. She also presents nationally and internationally on wide-ranging topics related to relationships and sexuality. And she was an adjunct associate professor at the Center for Human Sexuality Studies at Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. So can I start?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to start sharing the screen. Welcome all of you. I cannot see you, but I want you to know that I'm very excited to be able to provide some information that I hope will be useful to you all. So I do want to tell you a little bit about myself. As you know, I'm a relationship and ASEC certified sex therapist. I retired from my full-time position at Widener University, and I am right now an adjunct professor at the Center for Human Sexuality Studies at Widener University. I'm also a consultant and psychotherapy provider for Unite for Her. It is a national nonprofit organization that supports breast cancer and ovarian cancer patients. I'm also a cancer survivor, so I would like to share that information so you know that I have kind of walked the walk, maybe not the same way as you all have, but to some extent. So today I am here to talk about managing emotional distress related to sexual health changes after a cancer diagnosis. It's a mouthful, but what it basically means is, how are your feelings about sexual health changes after cancer diagnosis? So there are different phases of cancer journey. You know, there's the diagnosis, treatment, and survivorship. And sometimes if the cancer is metastatic, it could be ongoing treatment in addition to survivorship as well. So, you know, I have worked with a lot of cancer survivors, and during the initial phase of diagnosis, there is a initial shock, a feeling of body betrayal, that my body, I have clients who tell me, I drank green juice, I worked out regularly, I have never smoked in my life, my body has betrayed me. So there is that sort of a feeling about how their body is not doing what it should be doing. And also, I have heard a lot of people tell me, keep questioning, why me? Why did I get cancer? Why is this? It's a form of denial of what has happened. And sometimes after the initial, rejection of the reality, there's a focus on medical advice and treatment planning. So during the treatment phase, most people I work with focus on treatment exclusively, on the side effects. What is happening? Am I getting the best treatment? Should I get a second opinion? And how do I go about this? How do I manage the side effects? And sometimes it also involves managing body image issues, because during treatment is when the side effects, the physical side effects, the sexual side effects start happening. So managing these body image issues and other side effects is one of the major part of treatment phase, and more treatment planning as needed. Survivorship, or continuation of adjuvant therapy, is the other stage when there's some degree of relief that the treatment is ending to some extent. Focus on body image, focus on quality of life issues. That's when people start thinking about sexuality and relationship. How am I going to move forward after this? Post-traumatic stress could be one of the things they are dealing with at that time. And once they get to the other end, the end of the tunnel, they see light, sometimes they can experience what is called post-traumatic growth. a feeling of expansiveness where they see choices in life and they see other ways to be sexual and they move forward. So these are some of the trajectories that I have noticed in my practice. So there are many studies that have been done on emotional reactions to sexual difficulties. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to compile it and give you a little bit. So most of the studies, some were quantitative studies, some were qualitative studies, some were mixed method studies. So most of the studies found that most people experienced a great deal of frustration, lack of acceptance of what was going on. As I told you before, why me? And a feeling of bodily betrayal, that my body has betrayed me. And researchers also found that a lot of people were experiencing anxiety. And anxiety could be performance anxiety and response anxiety. And I will tell you what these are in the following slides. And some researchers also found that some people were talking about depression and profound sense of loss. So they felt that their whole sense of self as a sexual being has been altered. And they were also talking about, physical losses and loss of intimacy with their partner. So let's spend a few minutes on body betrayal. So a lot of people I work with, and also from the research I've read, are very self-conscious about their bodies, weight gain and, hair loss. Female pattern weight gain can be very distressing to people who identify as male. And scars, changes in penis size, skin changes. These are external things that really affect one's sense of self. It also affects their sense of self as a sexual being. So they're not, who am I now? My body doesn't look like it was before. And my most important sex organ that I have relied on for many years has also changed. So what is my sexuality all about? So this is definitely something that people tell me during, after the diagnosis process and after treatment. So anxiety is actually sexual difficulties can cause anxiety, and anxiety cause sexual difficulties. I mean, they go hand in hand. So after, diagnosis and treatment, after our body has gone through treatment, and when we realize that our body is not the same, and it is not going to behave the same way it behaved before, then there is what is called, then a lot of people experience what is called performance anxiety. Performance anxiety is worries regarding sexual function, whether or not I'm going to be able to be sexual, whether or not my partner is going to be satisfied with my sexual performance, whether or not I will be able to enjoy my sexual experience with my partner because my body has changed so much. So this could also be as a result of what people see as sex. Depending on where they learned about sex, it could be in a sex education class, it could be through porn, it could be through any kind of erotic material. So they have a very kind of set script about what sex should be. So if it doesn't happen that way, then they start developing performance anxiety. And what is response anxiety? Response anxiety is worries regarding one's ability to respond to the partner's bid for sexual connection. So when you are sitting next to your partner on the couch and your partner reaches out to you, and your mind immediately goes, uh-oh, my partner wants sex, wants to go all the way. I have no idea. I'm not interested. My body doesn't feel right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move away to the other side of the couch. So response anxiety can translate into alienating yourself from your partner, pushing your partner away. Okay, I don't want to respond to anything you're doing, so I'm going to move away from you. So eventually it leads to a complete lack of connection. So sometimes partners of male cancer survivors, female partners of male cancer survivors tell me, I don't want anything. I just want him to put his arm around me. I want him to touch me. I want him to hold me. I don't need anything else. Why is he just rejecting touch? And even same sex couples talk about that. Like, men who have sex with men, they talk about, their cancer survivor counterparts, are really avoiding touch. And this could be because of performance anxiety and response anxiety. So the end result could be lack of touch. They just don't touch each other because they're worried that touch could lead to a lot of things that they do not want to do. So researchers have also found that depression is a very common outcome of sexual difficulties after cancer, and a deep sense of loss. A lot of researchers have found that patients have experienced a deep sense of loss. So let's look at this a little bit. What is altered sexual self-schema? It's a mouthful, isn't it? So I will demystify it for you. So we have a sense of self as a sexual being. We kind of know what we look like and who's going to be interested in us and how we are in bed and what we are like. So we have a sense about our sexual self. So when we experience an illness, what happens is our sense of self is altered. Who we are as a sexual being is completely altered. And that can be quite scary for a lot of people because we don't know anything else. This is the only thing. This is who I am. And how did I change this much? And what do I do with this new body, new self, new body parts that are not behaving the way they used to before? So this is why it is really important to rediscover our sexuality. It is just like writing a new script for ourselves. In most studies, people affected by cancer and their partners speak about a sense of loss of body sensation, performance ability, sexual confidence, connection with partner. So they have talked a lot about this, like a sense of loss. So it's very important to kind of take a look at that at some point and see how can we deal with the sense of loss? Because if we stay immersed in the loss, we may not be able to look at how we can come out of it and how we can be sexual. So it is very important to kind of look at the loss and figure out how to get out of it. So the altered sexual self schema, I know it's a mouthful, but I do want you to know it's a sense of self as a sexual being. What happens is when we do not feel good about our bodies, when we feel uncomfortable with the changes that have happened, we may start expecting that sex would not be good. So that's what's called negative anticipation. Just thinking, sex is not going to be good because my body is not going to do what it's supposed to do. And so they may develop what's called performance anxiety. So because they have performance anxiety, they may actually not be able to perform even the way they could perform, because their mind is now, kind of involved in this mental chatter. You're not good enough. This is not good. Your body's not good. And, your partner's going to look at the scars. Your partner's going to be turned off by you. So these are mental chatter that goes on in our mind. Sexologists call this cognitive distractions. When your mind is completely distracted by all these negative thoughts, the negative anticipation, as we call it. So when that happens, it leads to an unsatisfactory sexual encounter. So it leads to a sexual experience that wasn't good. So that then continues as a cycle. So next time your partner is reaching out to you, you'll either move away to the other end of the couch, or you will say, okay, we can try again, but I'm not feeling great about it. First of all, I just want you to know, this may not even be good. I'm not sure. And, this is not, anyway. So they start off with all these negative anticipation. Then it goes back to the mental chatter, unsatisfactory sexual encounter. So this cycle needs to be broken. So the negative anticipation and performance anxiety and the mental chatter needs to settle. We need to practice mindfulness to sort of allow these thoughts to sort of come in and then go, so you don't hold on to it. So you can say, okay, you go, we are going to do whatever happens. It'll be fine. I'll be fine. So this cycle is important for you all to remember. And how can we move beyond these difficult emotions? So it's very important to, first of all, learn about sexual side effects. I know you've had this entire series. I listened to a little bit of Dr. Rubin's presentation, and she, must have talked about side effects and how to manage them. So it is very important to be an educated consumer, so you know what the sexual side effects are, so you can find there are ways to work through all these side effects. There are sex therapists, there are physical therapists, there are urologists who can offer you some solutions. So there are a lot of healthcare providers who can help with these things. Most of the times, my clients tell me, how can we talk to healthcare providers about this? I don't even feel like asking them. So it is very, very important to be assertive about it, because healthcare providers often are not trained to talk about sexuality. So they may not bring it up, but if you bring it up, they will definitely answer your question or refer you to somebody who can answer the question. But please be assertive and ask about how to manage the sexual side effects. And working through our feelings of loss, explore new ways to be sexual. Are there, if you could just like be more flexible about how you want to be sexual, you may not feel that deep sense of loss. And I mentioned this to most people I work with, which is put cancer in its place. Do not make that your full narrative. So always, remember to sort of say, yeah, I'm a cancer survivor, but I'm also all these other things. So if you make cancer your main theme, then you will live with that pain and loss and not be able to move forward. So sexual communication is important, and broadening the interpretation of sexuality. We'll talk more about it as we go through the presentation. So learning about sexual side effects. Knowledge is power. You know that, if we know what the side effects are, then we know there are people who can help us. So seek help from healthcare providers, physical therapists, sex therapists. Here's the resource for directory of sex therapists. This is a directory that there's an organization, national organization called ASECT. And ASECT has a national directory of sex therapists. So there are sex therapists in your own area I don't know, Lauren may also be a certified sex therapist. There are many, many sex therapists in your area. You can find them and you can go and meet with them to ask about your sexual side effect and your challenges and how to work on them. And find sexuality resources from reputable sites online, like the Inova website has so many resources. So getting the resources can also be helpful. Attending this workshop, you're doing a great job of finding resources. So that is a really nice way to also, educate yourself. So addressing loss, Dr. Daniela Whitman is going to be presenting at this series, and she created a wonderful model. She talked about loss, how the experiencing loss after prostate cancer diagnosis. She worked with prostate cancer survivors and patients, and she did several studies with them about their coping skills and their coping just by themselves and as a couple. And so she talks about grief and mourning as a gateway to a new and satisfying sexuality after cancer. This can be a little bit difficult for people who identify as men because men have been trained not to talk or express their feelings, not to, talk about their pain openly because they have to be so stoic. And that actually really doesn't help with the grief and mourning process. So I'm going to ask all of you to kind of think about being a little softer with yourself, allowing yourself to grieve, and find people to talk to about your grief. So I suggest finding a therapist who can help you and listen to you so you can process the grief and mourning, and from that, find a way to get out of it and find a new way to handle your sexual changes. So Dr. Whitman talks about acknowledging the loss and experiencing the emotions. This is the part that I told you, you need to be soft and allow yourself to experience the emotion. Create a perspective on their past sexuality. So you had sex with a very hard erect penis before. Now your penis is not as erect and maybe it doesn't get erect very easily. How can I now work with this? This is my body too. So how can I now enjoy sexuality and connection with my partner? So just like acknowledging loss, experiencing the emotion, and creating perspective of your past sexuality can help you develop a new sexuality based on your current capacity. So finding a way to be sexual in a way that would work for you. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have done this. I did not. Okay, sorry. So this is better. So creating a new narrative about your body and cancer. So thinking about cancer as only part of you, and it's not your whole story. It doesn't have to be your whole story. I always tell people, put cancer in its place. It has a very tiny place in your life. Just put it there. Even if it has like a bigger space than you'd like it to have, just let it be there. But look at all the other things you can do. You as a sexual being is capable, you're capable of being sexual in so many ways. You do not have to use your body parts the way that you used it in the past. You can use it in many, many different ways. So think about that. And your brain is your biggest sex organ. It's the biggest and the best sex organ because all our fantasies come from our brain. All our arousal comes from our brain. We think about things that causes arousal. Even our orgasms are impacted by our brain, what's going on in our brain. So if we can rewire ourselves and write a new sexual script that accommodates the changes in your body, then you can certainly move forward with ease when your body changes. So here are a couple of other resources that I would like to suggest to you. One is mindfulness, staying in the present without judgment. So can you allow yourself to not to really allow the chatter to take over, the mental chatter to take over, but if you can stay present and don't judge yourself harshly, it's a very effective way to manage your distractions when you're in a sexual situation. A very, very useful resource in this regard is the book Full Catastrophe Living by Zabit Gabat-Zinn. Yeah, this is Zabit-Zinn. Yes, correct. So I would highly recommend this book, and I'm sure that your Inova resources includes the book. The book basically helps people be mindful and not with compassion, with self-compassion. And there's another resource for self-compassion, being self-compassionate. I tell people, can you write a compassionate letter to yourself, to your body? And can you say, I see you, I see that you've been through a lot. I'm going to accept you as you are right now. And, just allowing with self-compassion, accepting the changes to your body. And guided self-compassion meditations and mindful self-compassion program, these are all resources you can find in Kristen Neff's website. And they are very, very useful for being mindful and being self-compassionate. Because if you're self-compassionate, you will accept your body and allow it to be sexual in ways that it can. So that is really, really important. So here are some tips I have for partnered sex. We have all been conditioned to believe that sex is intercourse. I ask people when I do presentations, unfortunately, we are not in an interactive environment. If not, I would have asked you that question. What is sex? Most of the times people think sex is intercourse. And that's the first thing I correct when people come to see me for therapy. Because I'm like, sex is not intercourse. Sex is one part of intercourse. There are so many other aspects to sex. So if you think of sex as intercourse and limit yourself to that way of thinking, then as your body changes, you will then not be able to allow yourself to think that you can actually have sex. If your body changes as you're aging, I work with a lot of older people. So if your body is aging, if you're sick and you're not able to get an erection that you used to have before, then you're going to say to yourself, I can't have sex. But if you could think of sex as a myriad of things, you have so many choices, there's so many things that still count as sex. If you remember if you can go back to your teenage adolescent years, you were sexual with your partners in high school and stuff in the back of cars. You were not always having intercourse. You were doing all these other things. I don't understand at what stage people forget that and then start thinking intercourse is the only way to have sex. So it is time to go back and think about those creative ways you were sexual with your partner. So hugging, sensual caress, massage, cuddling, kissing, oral and manual stimulation, use of vibrators. A lot of people have a hard time with vibrators because they think vibrator is taking their place in the relationship. Definitely not. vibrators can be used, as an addition to your presence. So if you're comfortable with the use of vibrators, it would be a really great asset. And other sex toys, there are so many other sex toys like dildos, and there's strap-ons. There's so many different things that you can use. And intercourse and other forms of penetration can also be part of a bigger picture, a broad view of sex. So if you could think of sex as a broad canvas, I usually like to say it's like a buffet table. There are so many things on the buffet table. You don't always have to go for the meat and potatoes. You can always have something else that's maybe fun and more interesting, something new. So this also brings in more novelty in your relationship. So if you could, try something new, you'll feel more free. What if you felt that you don't have to perform? All you need to do is you're going to just cuddle, you're going to make out, and that's all you're going to do. It's also going to free you up to not feel the intense anxiety and loss and depression that you're going to feel if you think the only way to have sex is to have intercourse. So this is one of the most important parts of good sex too. Good sex requires planning and communication. People think that sex doesn't require communication. So they make a big mistake. They are, trying to be sexual without talking to their partner. So nobody is talking. They all have thought bubbles. You see those cartoons with those thought bubbles. I'm going to go touch her shoulder. Let me see what she does. Oh, he's coming and touching my shoulder. I don't know what he wants. I don't want to scare him. I'm just going to stay still and see what happens. Oh, she's not, she's staying still now. So does it mean she doesn't like anything? Maybe she was disappointed because I had tried to have sex with her on Saturday. It didn't work. She's probably thinking she doesn't want to have sex. And she's thinking something else. So all these thought bubbles that nobody can see is not helping your relationship. It's not helping your sex life. It is very important to communicate. It's very important to say, hey, I have been feeling a little bit anxious when I try to be sexual with you because the last time it didn't work as well, and I'm not sure, my penis is not as erect as I'm used to having it be. So what are some of your thoughts about that? Your partner may say, I don't really care. I don't care. We could just do something else. So the communication can be a big liberator. Once you communicate what you're feeling, your partner can support you. If you don't communicate, your partner cannot support you. So you're living with your own thoughts. And then you're going to taking it to bed as cognitive distractions. So remember that. So when you talk, you can also have positive anticipation. Okay, we've already talked and we are only going to cuddle, and that's okay. This will work for me. So there's lower anxiety and there's higher level of comfort with sexual and sensual experiences, right? So, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable and I can just do this much and that's fine. And my partner doesn't mind. And so they have enjoyable sexual and sensual experience. And then it results in couples bonding. You're feeling comfortable with your partner. So you plan and communicate more and more. So this is also a cycle. So start the cycle by communicating with your partner. That is a very, very important step to, to being sexual. So it is also important for your partner to learn about sexual side effects. So be honest, talk to them about the sexual side effects, do research with them. This is what has happened to me. Let me just look at these are the articles I'm reading. This is what the doctor's saying. Be transparent with them so they also know what is happening. There's no reason to keep this information a secret or private. If you are single and dating, you do not have to tell people about your cancer and your sexual side effects on a first date. You can get to know them, and then you can talk to them about it. And most people you will find are willing to accommodate. And if they're not meant for you anyway. And discuss how best to adapt your sexual style. This is what I like, but this is what my body can do. So can we try and do something that would work for me right now? Find creative ways to explore sexual activities that feel comfortable. There are many creative ways. If you can use some of the sex toys. You could use like a blindfold. You could, just playful ways to be sexual can take away the pressure to perform a certain way. And talk about what works and what is not working for you. Like, what doesn't work for me is when you wake up in the middle of the night and you try to grab me. I don't feel great. I need some prep time. Is that okay? So communication again. And use humor and be playful, because, I know this is a very hard and tough milestone in your life. But if you can do all the things I asked you to do, and also try and be, kind of playful, sex can be a lot easier. So I think I finished my presentation a little bit early. So I'm ready to ask if anybody has any questions.
This was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information.
You're
I know
welcome.
you can't see all of us as you were presenting, but I know certainly I got excited and took some notes even myself. So appreciate you sharing what you did. We don't have any questions quite yet at this moment, so we'll give everybody a chance to
Yes.
pop some of those questions in. And
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious, for the first time you described the buffet table to those that you work with. Are the reactions to that sometimes a little reserved, or a little unsure about the buffet table when we've always had meat and potatoes and we're not quite sure what that looks like?
Sometimes there could be a pushback, but no, I really want my body to work that way. This is what I want. So that sometimes results in us working with a loss. Like, this is a lack of acceptance of changes, right? So I try to work with the loss and try to help them, kind of accept it.
Really kind of focusing on that grief piece.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, I think there are some questions here.
Yeah. Is it possible to successfully address sexual dysfunction in a mixed gender group, such as the survivorship group for medical visits?
It is possible to do that. But I think, I've been very careful in talking about the gender difference, because I think the difference is actually evolving and changing, because a lot of women feel the way men feel. So the only difference I have found is it's easier to sell the buffet model to women than to men, because the women have always wanted the buffet model. So they are like, oh yeah, I like that idea. Okay, tell me more. Whereas the men are like, no, I mean, this is the meat and potatoes is what I learned about, and this is what we talked about. And so I would rather have this. So you have to, again, be careful about how you talk about it. And you can be open about the differences. There are a lot of men I work with who are very pleased with the buffet model as well. They're like, okay, fine. They have this intense sense of relief. Okay, I don't have to always perform a certain way.
Reduce the pressure.
Oh, yes, yes.
had a few people ask throughout the presentation and right now, how do we get links for these presentations, including yours? Just to share with everybody here, obviously, as you can see, we are recording. Presentation recordings will be available after the series is complete. And so those are going to go on the Life with Cancer site, and we'll be sure everybody who's attended gets a link for that.
That's great.
Any other questions?
Toy, I find it.
Oh, okay. Wife got a toy found by mistake, and it was a little upsetting. Okay. So, thank you for both of you for sharing those experiences here. If you can kind of check out the chat, I think part of this experience is also so important to know that you're not alone, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
and knowing that, struggling with the grief. Do you have any more you'd want to elaborate on how to get started on processing that grief that can be so intense and so personal and sometimes so scary to really kind of start to open the door to?
I think it is important sometimes to work one-on-one with someone, with a therapist, to really talk about the grief, because it is a very powerful kind of pain that it is hard to sometimes talk about it in a group. It's a little bit easier to talk about it one-on-one, at least in the beginning, because the feelings are so intense. So that would be my first step to working through it, because there's no way around it. The only way is through it. And as hard as it is, you will have to sit with somebody and to cry and do whatever you need to do to kind of deal with the grief and the pain.
Do you have any unique advice or suggestions for those that are young dealing with this? Within our kind of young adult crowd, 40 and under.
Yes, I am well aware of it. Again, I would give the same advice, finding a therapist, want to talk one-on-one, joining groups, finding others who can support you, and getting all the support you need, and rediscovering different ways to be sexual. I still remember the sexologist who wrote the book, She Comes First. It's a book called She Comes First. It's written by Ian Kerner. He's also writes for New York Times sometimes. And he is, very well known in the field. And he wrote a book about how to please women. And the very first chapter, he wrote about how he realized that he was an early ejaculator. And he was very self-conscious about the fact that he was an early ejaculator. So he learned all about women's bodies so he could please his partner so much that she wouldn't miss the heavy thrusting that he thought women wanted. So he said it made him a much better lover, because he knew exactly, he found all these other ways to please his partner. So he writes this whole book about how to please women. And it came from his experience of being an early ejaculator. So I think from these physical issues, the thing that could come out of it is also learning how to be a different, creative, and better lover.
Yeah, I've had somebody I've worked with also share with me this, trying to find that kind of reframe, right?
Yes.
After processing some of this grief of, this is an opportunity for me and my partner to learn our sex life again. And
Yes.
their thought around this was, who gets that chance, right? It took a while to get to this reframe, a lot of the grief work and whatnot, but that recognizing that, I can look at this as a new exploration, something that
Absolutely.
can be fun and playful, just what you talked about.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious for those who have medical providers who haven't brought this up.
Yes.
How would you recommend starting that conversation? Because that can be also a pretty scary one to start.
It's an intimidating process. What research is showing us is patients do not bring up sexual issues if healthcare providers don't bring it up. So it is true that healthcare providers sometimes are not comfortable talking about sexuality. So you will have to do this. You will have to take it upon yourself to say, may I ask you a few questions about my sexuality? May I? That's it. Because by asking that, they can say, no, I'm not sure I can answer it. Or they're going to, most of the times they'll say, let me find the answers for you. So
It
I
can
think
be,
we have to empower them to ask the questions.
and it can be surprising sometimes when that door isn't opened by the provider, but how open they are to the question when it
Yes,
happens. And of course, every relationship and every provider is a little bit different.
yes,
But knowing that oftentimes that question is well received, and even if the answer isn't there, it's something
yes,
they're willing to support with. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. I know one gentleman had mentioned that that his partner got a vibrator and it was very upsetting. So I just want everybody to know that a vibrator is not going to compete with you. It is just something you can use as an additional tool to pleasure your partner. So do not take the vibrator as your rival. The vibrator is not your rival. The vibrator is just think about the vibrator as your um, your helper. If you can think of it as a helper, then because you're the most important person, your presence is what your partner wants. So you will have to reframe the whole thing about the use of vibrators.
And I think that also opens the door to this idea of communication around sex.
Yes,
How do we
yes,
talk about sex? And, are we able to share when things are hurtful or upsetting or something that we want to try that's new that we haven't explored before, and things like that, to kind of take that brave step and say, kind of what you said
yes,
before, may I talk to you about this thing in our
absolutely.
relationship that I want to talk about? Yeah, that's important to me.
Yes, yes. I think it's a good idea. Let me see.
Yes, exactly. Important for both to feel comfortable using it together for mutual enjoyment.
Okay, what is the name of the sexologist? Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat so you can have it. It is Ian Kerner. And he wrote the book, She Comes First. There it is. And it's
Any other questions for Dr. Pillai-Friedman? I'm absolutely thrilled to learn from you tonight. So grateful for you being here with us and sharing all of this expertise. Something I do on the regular, and I still took vigorous notes. So I'm incredibly grateful for what you had to share with us today.
yeah, I know. So it says stage 3. There's another question that's come up. So
Yeah,
when I'm in
my
treatment with
partner.
prostate cancer, is it better to start therapy separately first or together? I would, you could start therapy together and see how it goes. But I think sometimes when we have a lot of raw, unprocessed emotions, it is better to kind of talk to a therapist one-on-one so we can be free enough to talk about it, because not only are we talking about our own selves, we're also talking about how we're experiencing a partner. Sometimes it's hard to talk about a partner when they are in the same room. So depending on what your comfort level is, you may want to do individual therapy for some time and then move into couples therapy.
Thank you for that question.
Yes, great questions. I'm very excited about all the questions that are coming in.
Give it another minute. If anybody else has other questions they want to make sure get in and get answered.
Okay, some other questions. So I think that a gay man with a very committed partner. This is going to be a big change, but I struggle about his feelings about this. It's my third time with cancer and he's trying to be strong for me, but do you think I need to focus on myself and let him do something? Well, you definitely should focus on yourself and your self-care and what feels good and what works for you. But through communication, you can also see what's going on for him. Maybe he is very happy with however you are being sexual. Maybe he's fine with it. So I would ask him, what else do you need? I mean, is there a different way for us to be sexual? Would there be is there something I can do to please you more? So the communication at what it comes down to. Whoever your partner is, it is really important for you to kind of see where they are, because most of the times when we make up things in our head about what their reaction is, we are often wrong.
We have a couple other questions. For someone who has never used sex toys, is there a good, simple way to start?
Oh, what a great question. I think, you have to think about what kind of sex toy you would like, because for someone, you could use a vibrator, you could use a dildo, you could use a strap on. So I would maybe start with a vibrator. And there are some really reputable sex toy companies where you could actually call the customer service and ask for help. I don't know if you know about this, Lauren. There is an ASECT certified educator who has an online sex shop in Wisconsin. Her name is Ellen Barnard, and it is called sexualityresources.com. And that is a great way to just like call and say, hey, this is what we are going through, and we want to buy a sex toy so we can try something. What do you recommend? So is there a way for me to get this information? Yeah, sexualityresources.com, yes. And then there's another one, goodvibrations.com is good. .com. And then this is that drawer. Thatdrawer.com, I think that's what it is, thatdrawer.com. So that drawer is a sex shop that is run by a sex therapist. It's in Long Island.
Okay.
So Good Vibrations. Some of these places have good customer service. You can just like call them and they will actually, I should have just done a slide on these sex shops, and I missed the opportunity, but I can also email them to you and you can send it to the people who are here.
That would be great. For those that are local to the DC area where we are here, there's a couple of great shops in Alexandria, Virginia, called Miss Moxie's, and then the other is I'm gonna blank on it, but I will find it and put it in the chat. Lotus Blooms, thank you.
Lotus Blooms, yes.
The other one is Lotus Blooms, and similar to what you're describing, incredibly knowledgeable, very open and welcoming staff. It's really a couple of incredible places to go.
You know what can be really fun is if you go to the sex shop, that in and of itself can be very exciting because it brings up this novelty and mystery into the relationship and interaction. Do it in a playful way. This will add to your playfulness.
Like a new activity you get to do together.
Exactly.
Yeah. On this topic, the dildo strap-ons, etc., sound like moving back toward penetrative action. If we're trying to de-emphasize that, what else do you recommend?
Vibrators. And, I highly recommend blindfolding and using a feather, different sensory experiences with a blindfold on, mild bondage, those sorts of playful things that de-emphasize. I'm suggesting strap-ons because if you really want to have the experience of penetration, keep all of that on the buffet table. You could put that on the buffet table, put the vibrator on the buffet table, put a blindfold on the buffet table. Keep all of them available to you when you want to be sexual. Then you can stop thinking about penetrative sex as the only option.
Someone asked, should a wife be upset if a husband chooses to masturbate after prostate cancer radiation therapy?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is actually necessary for you to masturbate. So I think that is an unreasonable. Sometimes women think masturbation is cheating, but they need to get over it because I think about 93% of men masturbate and about, I don't know, 50% of women masturbate. So I think men and women have to be open about their partners masturbating.
And again, I'm guessing coming back to that communication piece.
Yes, exactly.
That is. Post prostate removal, will a vibrator work?
You'll have to try it. You'll have to, because again, your erotic zone is going to change. So after any kind of treatment, any kind of surgery, your erotic zones are going to change. So you will have to figure it out. You'll have to really explore your body with the vibrator to see where your sensations are.
I think everybody's body is so unique to them,
Yes.
and what feels good and doesn't feel so good, or what feels nice but isn't a turn on, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other questions from the group for Dr. Pillai-Friedman?
Excellent. So many excellent questions. This is
Good
great.
questions. Yeah, it's such a great conversation.
Yes.
Getting some thank yous. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I'm very honored.
Well, we are incredibly grateful to have had you here. Your knowledge on this area is just unbelievable. So amazing to have you here and just hear from an expert who truly kind of knows, like you said at the beginning,
Yes.
you walk this walk, and we just so appreciate your honest and really amazing feedback in this presentation. Lots of good nuggets of what can be done at home, right? Things that
Yes.
and employ
Yes.
tomorrow. And we're so grateful for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you everybody for being here with us tonight. We're so grateful to you to being a part of this conversation. Our next session in the Men's Sexual Health series will be on March 26th. So we'll have about a week off, and then we'll see you again on Tuesday, the 26th. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much.